Again, I just want to thank you guys for coming to the call and allowing us to just have a little bit of discussion about social media from around the services. Again, for those that are watching, my name is Quan Hall. I'll be the host of the call. I want to take the time to allow our panel to introduce themselves and just tell us a little bit about how long they've been in their position. We can start with Sonia if you want. You're on mute.
Starting off professionally, I like it. My name is Sonia Mckay. I'm the manager of Space Force digital channels. I am brand new to the DoD and to the government. I come from nonprofit sector and storytelling. My background is television and news and documentary filmmaking. So I approach this really as storytelling and making sure we tell the right story with the right tools on the right channel and making sure all of that fits and making sure everybody sees it in the way they want to.
Good. Tony?
Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. Tony O'Brien, representing Team Army here. So I'm the acting chief of the Army's Digital Media Division. I've been in this role for about 4 years. I'm usually the deputy, but we're in between chiefs right now. So, and I brought along a couple friends. I got Sergeant First Class Richardson, who's our NCOIC, and he has Mr. Fred Brown, who's a social media specialist on our team. And they are the folks that are not pictured here. But thanks for having us.
Marine Corps, that's on.
Hello, everybody. My name is Staff Sergeant Eric Estrada. I've been here for about 2 years, and I'm the digital engagement chief here at the Marine Corps. And we just like to tell the Marine Corps story as best as possible.
Jillian?
Hi, I'm Jillian Adams. I'm the digital media manager for the National Guard Bureau. So it's Army Guard, Air Guard, and of course, all the joint activities. And I've been in this role, oh God, it's been about 10 years now, which is kind of crazy.
Mr. Gadby.
Hello all, my name is Tim Gadby. I started this role in November of last year, right as the department as a whole kind of got absorbed by all the Space Force. And so I got to do both for a little while, and I recently just transitioned back to just being the Air Force digital media team lead. My background, I'm a prior Navy MC. After that, I worked for the Air Force as a public affairs press representative, and then I did some time at Homeland Security for a while, working for the Secretary. So,
okay, and I think that is everyone. All right. So again, we just want to just have a conversation with you guys and talk about social media and what you guys are doing at your levels. When it comes to social media, and we don't expect, of course, perfect answers by any means, but we would like a little bit of insight on how you guys are doing day-to-day operations and things like that, and how maybe the things that you guys are doing at your level can help people at lower levels or across the DoD and the government. So I guess my first question would just be in regards to like resources. How big are you guys as teams in your respective locations? Sonia, you could start if you like.
I probably have the smallest team. It's basically 4 of us. So we're doing everything with a mighty small team who's also learning about space at the same time.
Tony, you guys probably have the largest, am I correct?
I think with so we have a team of contractors, a couple soldiers, and a couple civilians. So we have 16, but that's broken down again because we also own the Army's website. So unlike probably you guys, we own the technical requirements for that too. So part of that team are our programmers, our coders. I call them our super nerds. But we also have our web designers and content managers for the website too. So all in all, 16.
Staff Sergeant, about the Marine Corps.
So for the Marine Corps, we have 6 content producers along with myself and Mr. Kelly. So that's a team of 8, but we're built to have 10. But with the Marine Corps, we never get all the bodies we should get. So it's usually around 8 to 10, but that's as big as we got.
Jillian, how about your team?
So we, like the Army, manage the National Guard's website as well. And that team for all the organizational accounts and the website is 4. And then we have 3 that are dedicated either to the Chief of the National Guard Bureau or like the directors of the Army and Air side. But yeah, it's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah. How about you, Tim?
For myself, my total team is 5. I have 3.5 active airmen and a graphic designer. Sonia and I also share some resources since we kind of fall under the same department umbrella with the SAF-PA umbrella as a whole. But just day to day, when it comes to tasking, we have a total force of 4.5 is what I'll call it.
So how do you manage that as far as like your content creation or what have you? How does that play into managing social media on a day-to-day basis? Anybody can take that.
I'll start so we can snake back, I guess. Essentially a lot of, because it's a giant Air Force, a lot of what we do at our level is essentially curating what comes from the field. I always pass it on to my team. A lot of, when you work in the Pentagon, in the building, everybody thinks what's happening in the Pentagon is the most important thing. However, 99% of Americans could care less about who your secretary is, who your vice general. They just want to see cool aircraft and airmen doing cool stuff. So with that in mind, I always remind them, yes, we have our box checkers that come from senior leadership, but at the end of the day, people aren't following us for updates on where the secretary is. We have to curate things from airmen downrange, doing the cool stuff that the Air Force is known for, not the wonky bureaucratic stuff that we can get caught up in every day.
Okay. Jillian, anything?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. We have such limited numbers of people that work on our team that content curation is basically the only way that we have enough content to fill all of the platforms that we're managing and get the content directly that people care about. Again, if you don't have people that you can send out all over, you've got to rely on the folks in the field. And so a huge part of what we do is we're reaching back out, making sure they have the resources and they know what we're looking for and trying to make sure that the content that we get is content we can use.
Okay. That's on as Marine Corps pretty much set up the same?
Sort of. So obviously you were here beforehand, and I think the Marine Corps realized the importance of digital engagement early on and built a pretty big team. So for the most part, we have one Marine every single week who handles social media duty, who vets all the content coming through DivVids through the fleet. But at the same time, we like to have teams that are going out and telling stories, finding stories, and having those unique stories be able to tell them that tie back to the Marine Corps. And that's why we have such a big team. Not really sure if that answers the entire question, but that's how we manage content creation here. And then we also plan ahead of time. We're big on our history, and we plan 3 months ahead out of time sometimes, and we try not to miss any of it. And we assign, and we kind of just put it on each individual Marine to not fail on that mission. But it's a lot of planning and a lot of responsibility here. And that's why we have such a big team.
Gotcha. Tony, anything to add to that?
Yeah, similar. For the social media side of the house, it's 5 people for us that are dedicated to that effort. So we're starting to get some in-house capability, but we don't have in-house production. So we rely on some partnerships with the Army team over at DMA, AMVID, and some other folks. And so, for us, similar to Eric, we and also to Tim's point, we're at the whim of the building sometimes, and we do have some planning processes in place where our goal is really to plan 2 months out. Now, news of the day, such as today, there's some key things going on, and tomorrow as well, but you have to pay attention to. But it's always a challenge of how do you balance the communication priorities of your leadership with the conversations that are naturally happening on social media, because as we're all kind of know that those things don't always align up. So right. What we're trying to venture into is a better balance of here's what we want to tell you, but here's what you want to know. And so, we'll probably talk about social listening and stuff like that more. But yeah, content planning, and you know, if we have a couple minutes to give Sergeant Richardson some time, he's got a production team kind of methodology that he uses. But Sergeant Rich, you got anything that you wanted to say in regards to content?
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it. Content development it's big for us. Like Tony said, there's a lot of things in play. What I've done since I've been here is kind of develop these partnerships, and when you don't have those in-house capabilities, you need the partnerships. It's the units in the field that are creating the content that's going to help your platforms grow. So the better you get to know them, understand their capabilities, and then kind of explain what you need, being that higher element, and what you need for them to make this a national or global product. You know, that's the better your product's going to come out. So we lean on those relationships all the time. So we kind of reach out, and we want to highlight different units all the time, just to keep it a variety, and just to let these units know that it's your people that we're talking about. We want to highlight you. The Army's not in the Pentagon. It's across the globe. So we want to continue to show these different units, what they're doing, the leaderships, the soldiers. So that's important for us. Fred, you want to jump in on it?
No, I think you've covered everything. It's all about, it's all about the storytelling of the people on the ground, and they're our biggest producers, and we love them.
Awesome. And Sonia, I'm sure you're in a different role, especially just starting out. Like, how do you even begin to start to curate that, or what is your approach to adding social media to the Space Force?
Yeah, and I love that the Marines say that history is really important to them, and we are kind of creating that history right now with the Space Force. We don't have a history to look back to, so we do look into the past, into milestone moments that helped us get to having a Space Force, but that's really Air Force history, so we don't really focus on that. And then hearing the Army say that they've got 2 months worth of content already is awesome, and I look forward to getting there, but we just got the accounts 2 months ago, so in a way we are kind of playing catch up at the same time. But that content calendar and that editorial calendar is so important, so we can build out a skeleton of structure that's evergreen in a way that we can then add live events, the whims of the building onto, to be that muscle to that existing structure. So we are kind of creating it as we're going, but it very quickly picks up steam if you do have that editorial calendar to fall back on for your structure.
I know, Tony.
Hey, Sonia, that's a really interesting point about you guys are making your history now. That's really neat. And so let me just clarify. So, man, I wish we had 2 months of content in all different channels. I think we publish something like 8,000 things a year. So, and I try to put that in context when we're working with our traditional media folks and our planning folks. And sometimes if things go sideways, it's like, well, think about it. We put out more than 8,000 things a year. So while I would love to have 2 months, it's planning for 2 months. And that's through, we have a product through ACPA that goes out through an email called a CPA sends. Anyway, it's a communication playbook. And so that helps to line out, hey, here are some of the key things, like in August with the 19th Amendment, where we can forecast some potential opportunities to put the Army story out. And then what we do in-house is we then create a monthly digital strategy that takes it from that wider planning perspective, that has outreach and media from our plans division. And we kind of focus that down into digital stuff. And that's where Sergeant Richardson comes into play. And then there's a multimedia content thing that tracks, what you're making for what platform. But that's the process that we've put together so far. So our goal, although we're not always there, and we use a tool called Sprinkler, which I think the Marine Corps uses, if I'm not mistaken. Our goal is where we try to get to is 2 weeks of content, nice, polished, reviewed, things that support communication priorities type of content at any given point in time. That fluctuates obviously based on, what everything that's going on, but that's the goal. And then for editorial process, I don't know if I'm getting ahead, just stop me if I am, but our rule, we have a 6 eyes rule. So for any individual piece of content, before it gets published, 3 people have to look at it with me or the we have a major in our officer, who's kind of the last line that does the approval.
Okay, actually, that was leading right into what I was going to talk about. Not only are you guys talking about like 2 to 3 months in advance, which is amazing, but the review process, like, what does that look like? So, are we sitting down and looking at a month out and reviewing all that content for that month, prior to, or is it like a day-to-day operation type deal? I mean, how does that work exactly? Sonia, start out. I'll throw it back to you since you guys are so far ahead. It seems like.
Well, like the Army said, we'd like to be that far ahead. We plan, we assign for up to 3 months out. We want to focus on the things that are near, but sometimes it's a week up and we're looking at version 6 of a video. For the most part, it stays in house. It goes to the director, and once the director, Mr. Kelly, approves it, it's good. But for the approval, goes through the Marine to myself to Mr. Kelly. But we try to streamline it as much as possible. Since we are digital engagement, we've got the go ahead from upstairs that, hey, you guys know what you're doing online. You haven't got us in front of the commandant yet, so go ahead. You're good. But that's what we do for our reviewing process. That's for content we produce in-house and also content we pull from the fleet.
Yeah, we've got broad strokes in terms of an editorial planning calendar. We're kind of a unique organization too, though. A huge part of what people come to us for are the events that are happening real-time, domestic response, emergencies, things like that. So, for example, since March, we've basically thrown out the editorial calendar because of COVID and then civil disturbance missions and things like that. So my team, we have like a monthly focus for our office that goes out to all 54 states and territories of things that we're hoping to talk about. And then we've got, the regular observances and things like that. And we try to keep the number of observances that we keep on that as broad as possible, because you never know when there's going to be that moment that it aligns with what you're working on in real time. So in April, I guess it was, for example, it was National Nurses Week, which could not have come at a better time in the middle of our COVID response. And so within 3 or 4 days, we put together a full week-long campaign of videos and stories and photos and things like that from the field of ways that we were working with nurses, National Guard nurses, and what they were doing with it. So your editorial calendar should be, it's a great thing to have, and you should absolutely be trying to plan for everything you can, but be flexible, because, you never know when you're gonna have to throw it out entirely. And when it comes to the approval process, we've got kind of red, green, and yellow topics. So anything in a certain area, we don't necessarily need to go to higher level approval to get that posted. But if it's around certain topics, then it's going to need to go 1 level up, and then other topics at least 2 or 3 levels up. So trying to make that list ahead of time with your managers and your folks to see what your top issues are going to be and what your problems could potentially be, and assigning more, always lean towards more people looking at it rather than fewer. I think is our approach.
That's good. That's good. Tim, did you have anything to add, or?
Yeah, kind of going along theme with what's already been said, but for as far as evergreen stuff, when it comes to pretty airplanes and people jumping out of planes and cool rappelling and stuff like that, yeah, we schedule that out as far as reasonably possible. Like everyone else, we have kind of box checker dates that we're always tracking. Like off the top of my head, I know Coast Guard birthdays coming up, things on that we can go ahead and mark in. However, there's always big ticket events around the corner. A good example for me is today is July 29th. A week from now, we're going to get a new Air Force Chief of Staff. So we know next Thursday is going to be a big, heavy Air Force Chief of Staff day. We're not going to schedule a bunch of evergreen content because that's our headline for that day. That content isn't yet available, but it's a big, giant block in our calendar. So when it comes to scheduling, it requires a little bit of foresight as far as some of the things are coming, and prepping for something that might be more quiet day. Also, lastly, we I guess a good way to put it is we try to, when we're getting ready to create content, we try to find ways to make it all connect to where it's all getting back to our point and trying to drive traffic as much as possible to our own platforms. I don't want to get too far ahead when it comes to amplification and things like that, but the airmen on the team are always trying to think about ways to tie things together back to messaging when it comes to getting too far ahead. But as far as the approval process itself goes, we do have that schedule and those big blocks planned out a little bit further out, but we take it day by day as far as what we show anyone past my immediate boss. So we send a daily run of show every day, sometime between 3 and 4 p.m. Similar to what's going on at the Army. We have not quite as hard or fast as the 6 Eyes rules, but the entire team kind of goes through the run of show, and then they let me know when it's ready to go, and I'll give it a pass as well. And from there, we send basically a PDF with all of our scheduled posts for the next 24 hours to our boss, who forwards it up to what I call the stratosphere, where people have multiple stars on their collar. So it's kind of a system that we have that works relatively well. It keeps our leadership happy. However, there's also a mutual understanding that we're due to flex on things when things change. So if there's a F-16 crash somewhere, God forbid, or something active happening on the operational side, we're always ready to flex and move things around to prepare for what the most important news element of that day is.
Okay. Awesome. Now, does your review process take into account like the comments and things? Are you guys engaging on your comments from day to day or week to week? I mean, what's that process like? Jillian, you got anything for that?
Yeah. It's been really interesting. We've had a tough couple of months, especially in our comments section. The civil disturbance mission wasn't particularly popular. And so we really had to step up our monitoring of those comment sections, especially because we were finding a lot of complaints about service member behavior on social media in some of those areas. And so we made it a priority as much as we possibly can. But again, with the size of our teams, it's really easy to get overwhelmed really quickly. And so trying to find that balance has been really important, using the moderation tools that are available on these sites as often as possible so that you're not trying to see everything in real time 24 hours a day when you don't have the team to support that. And making sure that you're taking things seriously. So we've got a crisis communication checklist that goes through every kind of scenario that we've managed to come up with. And it has all the people you need to contact, the basic messaging steps of, here's your immediate message, here are the steps you need to take to get to the statement level and all that. So we make sure that everybody on the team has a copy of that, and we share it with the field as well so that they can make their own version of it. But having something in place so that you're never caught off guard, late at night trying to figure out what your first step is really important for any of that.
Sonia, how about you? I know you guys are just starting up, but
yeah, it is definitely a one-way conversation. We're putting things out and then monitoring. We don't actually have back and forth communication with folks. But one thing that's really important to us is that the force is hearing the message from their commanders, not from social media first. So as we're rolling out these culture and identity and any sort of news, they're hearing it through the proper channels. They're not seeing it on Facebook first. So that is something we are very cognizant of. So we're not using these platforms to break news. So in a way that cuts down on a little bit of the communication back and forth that would be needed to happen, because the people we're speaking to with those things are having those conversations internally. And so, if the public is chiming in on Space Force things, we don't really need to have conversations with them because we really want to be having it with the force.
Right. Tony, anything different with the Army?
No, these are really, really great points. I'd love to see this color coding scheme that Jillian's got for her issues. Yeah, I think engagement is critical. I think as we try to grow and get better at this, the Army's massive and it's everywhere. And the span of questions and comments and issues that you can potentially get hit with day to day is pretty daunting. So having some systems in place where you have some common, say like a response library, can help you deal with that. There's some discussions underway, here at the Army level about kind of restructuring to facilitate better engagement. And so I'm pretty interested to see how that goes. I think what commanders are starting to realize is that social media, while it is supportive of a command information program, that's not all that it can do for you. And there's a lot of things that you can learn from the discussions that are happening on your content or in other places on the internet that can help you shape your messaging. So, we've seen lots of examples of that here recently. As Jillian said, it seems like this has been, almost crisis comm mode, crisis after crisis here lately. But you really can get a pulse of an issue area, and that pulse is, and I've seen it play out, has helped to really guide senior leader, recommendations in response and messaging. So if you can say, hey, here's what people are saying about this, they're not focused on this message that we plan to put out in a statement, they're talking about this whole other area, it's really helpful to make that messaging resonate some more.
Yeah, especially with rumor control too. I mean, that was a pretty big thing during COVID. We had one flyer in particular about a nationwide quarantine and the National Guard's going to come in and lock you in your house for 2 weeks. And that popped up in campaigns about 4 separate times where we were just getting hundreds or thousands of comments with, is this real? Is this true? And we took that and coordinated with our media team, talked about it in press conference updates with our 4-star general, as well as in our social media, on our social media platforms. But it's another example of taking what you're finding in those comments section and making it a bigger part of your overall PA communication plan, working together, because you can't rely just on these platforms and these mediums. But what you mentioned too, Sonia, I think one of the interesting things is that social media has proven that there is no internal and external conversation that you can be having, because everything you're saying internally is showing up over here anyway. So if you're not planning for that and you're not messaging for that, you're really shooting yourself in the foot. You have to be having that conversation across all of your different offices, because as we have all seen, it's all going to show up again anyway.
Tim, were you about to say something?
The only thing I can really add that hasn't been hit on is we're very selective in who we choose to engage with. Just because of the size of our platform, you could be bringing more attention to the trolls that they seek. So we almost take a don't feed the trolls mentality. I think Jillian mentioned it earlier. There are some of those inside the platform to where you can regulate some of the more left field stuff. However, the team, we usually take an active approach if it's something we know is going to be a little bit controversial, for lack of a better term. For instance, last month was June Pride Month. Anytime we posted Pride material, it was an interesting comment section, to say the least. We take the approach of, it's still First Amendment, we're a government platform. We allow public discourse. However, if it gets to any point where it's just outright bigotry, we're going to pull it and remove that from the page. So I guess to someone in the fleet or field, the best advice I can give on something like that is just be aware. Don't allow yourself to get sidetracked, get sideswiped by something that could turn controversial, because in your head it's not. For me personally, if I see a Pride post, I'm like, hey, that's great. I'm glad that the military is doing that. For a large segment of the population, they may or may not feel the same way. So if I know that I'm posting that, I'm going to be proactive about having someone on the team monitoring that. Also, just something that as the Air Force guy, we have to deal with a lot is there's a niche plane spotting community. They're very passionate about their planes. So we have to keep a close eye to make sure we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's between all the 18 million different variants of the C-130, the 5 variants of F-15s, because if we don't get it right, they will almost immediately. And they have their niche pages where they'll screenshot us and be like, haha, look, the Air Force are dummies. So little stuff like that you don't think about. In my coming up on close to a year on this job, that's something, hard lessons that I learned. Just like anywhere within the military infrastructure, attention to detail will take you a long way. So always be on the lookout for that kind of stuff.
Hey, Kwande. So I just want to check in. What was the question? What was our process for comments and engagement?
Yeah, comments engagement. Like I know we were talking about reviewing like content we're pushing out, but does that extend to your comment section as well? Or?
So for the comment section, that more so falls on Mr. Kelly and myself. We don't go to anybody else. We know how the Marine Corps, we know the brand, so we try to keep it to as little bit people as possible. That way there's not, change of voice, change of tone in what how we're engaging. But we do try to have our Marines know everything that's happening politically, all the external news, all the internal news. We want them to know and have a heartbeat on that, because we want them to see. And if they see a comment that shouldn't be there, we don't hide them, but we try to, we figure out what we can do to control that. We can't control what people are saying. It's the wrong word to use, but we do engage. And sometimes if, somebody's saying something that isn't too great, we might engage with them. We're trying to return back to some of our old ways where we used to be a little bit on the edge and people liked it. We got pulled back. Now we're getting told, hey, it's all right, go back to it. But for the comments, like I said, it stays with Mr. Kelly and myself. But we haven't really engaged too much. And at the same time, something that helps us out, there's so many offices obviously here at the Pentagon. We try to stay in constant contact with the Commandant's team and Sergeant Major's team. That way we know and we can speak confidently as to, okay, this is what we want to say, this is what we don't want to say, these are the things we want to stay away from, and these are the things we really want to highlight. So if you want to talk about it, we're all for it.
Okay, very good, guys, very good. So talking about, I guess we talk about in the classroom a lot about taking our experiences and kind of learning from them to evolve our social strategies. And I know, Jillian, you talked about, maybe some missteps. And I don't want to, of course, I'm not attacking you guys or anything like that by any means, but have there been any missteps that have, that you've learned from? And, what were the lessons learned, and how did you then evolve your processes based on that? Because one of the things we want people to do is, social media tends to be a little bit of a test bed. You go out there and you try things out, and if it doesn't work, then you adjust. Are there any lessons learned that you guys have for the fleet and field?
I could take this sort of start off if y'all want. So the Marine Corps, like I said, we used to be a little bit more edgy. I think the biggest thing is understanding the demographic of each platform. Each platform is different and is always evolving. We tried something a couple months ago, well, actually about a year ago now, on Twitter. We posted like Saturdays are for the boys, and in hindsight, obviously not the greatest thing to post, especially on Twitter. Twitter is probably the worst one to post it on. So I wouldn't call it a mistake. It's a lesson learned, and we use that now to kind of show the Marines why, because our team is very young. I'm the chief and I'm the oldest on the team, and I don't want to say my age, but I'm not that, mid-20s. So it's hard to, teach the younger Marines how to understand social media when they see it through the scope of Instagram, or they see it where, hey, I want to post meme-worthy things, but at the same time, you got to talk to the people on the Hill through Twitter and things like that. So if that would have never happened, we wouldn't have had solid, hard evidence as to why we can't talk so freely and openly on Twitter versus on Instagram, where we can do that. But that was one of the biggest things we learned, and we haven't done it ever since.
Very good. Anybody else? No?
Yes. No. So we, I think the biggest part of it is social listening. So, the best way to avoid the mistake in the first place is to know the environment that you're in and to know what pitfalls you're potentially falling into. And especially for us when it's during an emergency op or a mission that we know isn't particularly popular with large groups of people, paying attention to that public sentiment, paying attention to what people are saying about us when they're not tagging us, because a lot of people look at just their mentions and they're not looking at what people are saying in the, when they're not tagging you, has been a huge part of it. I would say every day of the civil disturbance missions for the first 2 weeks, we basically threw out the playbook every morning in terms of what we were going to post that day, what we were thinking we were going to do that day, and really paying attention to where we were at. And I think that's kind of been our way of avoiding the big, giant public mistakes. We've been really lucky, but we've also taken the approach that we're not trying to be the edgy kid or the cool kid on any of our social platforms. We want to be the grown-ups in the room to some extent. And the reason for that is because some of our missions tend to be a little bit more, close to home and emergency based. And so you don't necessarily want somebody to be, telling you life-saving information or rescues or things like that in that same voice and tone that's a little bit more jokey. It doesn't work for us as an organization and as a brand. And so knowing your brand, knowing your voice, and following that has been really important in avoiding the big mistakes, I think. Little mistakes we're all going to have. You're always going to have a bad day. You're always going to have somebody that misses a grammatical issue or accidentally tags the wrong unit, the wrong plane, for example, something like that. But owning those mistakes and doing so publicly and not trying to hide them is also really important. That authenticity and that ownership of the mistake and being willing to correct it is a huge, important piece of the puzzle, I think.
Very good. How do you guys go about choosing what platforms to use? And I know, Sonia, with you guys just starting out, I mean, is it one of those things where you want to try to make sure that you're everywhere? Are you selective about where you are based on, what you're putting out? What's your response to that?
So it's many things. And, when the Marine Corps was saying that they have, everybody's young on their team, our team of 4 is, half of them are NCOs. So I rely heavily on that young, vibrant voice, that fun, punchy voice, which doesn't have a place on a place like LinkedIn. And also having our leadership not be in that young voice. I'm just going to say it like that. They have this idea that this one piece of information should be everywhere. This one product should be everywhere. So it's kind of my job to demystify that for everybody and try and get them to understand this product really is a great product. Let's put it only here. And let's have it originate from the chief's account, and then the enterprise will share it, because that tells people where the heaviness of the message comes from. All those little things are tags to the audience of how to gauge the importance of content and of information, to know the voice it's on. So for me, in these early days, it's pushing our folks to understand that process better. It would be a whole bunch easier to just splash it everywhere and be like, publish everywhere, same thing. And that would probably make everybody happy, but it wouldn't be doing the job. And it wouldn't be reaching the right audience. So in these early days for us, it's really getting people to understand and getting the content producers who are making a lot of this to understand what they're creating their product for, where it's going to play, and also why. I keep coming back to our team and saying, well, why? And what's the goal? What do we, after people watch this, what do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do? And being able to track the analytics back to, okay, people watch, or this, here's a 3-minute video. I'm like, oh, that's so long. We should put it on Twitter. I'm like, nobody was going to watch it there. So, getting people to understand that is the first step. And then backing it up with the analytics to say, hey, nobody's going back to our owned platform to find out more. That's a failure. 70,000 people seeing it is not a success. Just, looking at giant numbers doesn't mean it's a success if they're not going back and doing something with the information. So in the early days, it's getting people to understand that. And I know by the time we get people to understand that, 1, there's going to be turnover. 2, there's going to be a turnover of technology. Something's going to happen to disrupt how we're doing everyday business. So constantly being evolving those products, the channels, how we're doing it is going to be a constant churn for us.
Well, Big Army, how do you guys choose your platforms?
It's not Richardson. I'll take that one. I think that's a good discussion. We say we let our units know don't just be on a platform just because it's out there. Understand where your audience is and the different audiences you're trying to reach. So if all your people that you're trying to reach is on Facebook, just maintain a Facebook page. There's no need to stress a small team just because, hey, our commander wants to be on every single platform out there. If you don't have the content for it, don't do it. Like I tell everyone that falls under us, it's content is not one size fits all. You can't just create something for Facebook and then put it on Twitter and Instagram. It doesn't work that way. Technically you can put it like that, but it's not going to play well. So you have to create content specifically for each platform. So for us, we're large enough to be able to be on, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, and create unique content for all, since we're reaching out to all the units in the field. But for some of the smaller commands, if you're only doing Facebook for that overall population and then you have Twitter for your command presence, then do that. Just make sure you're reaching those audience, you're creating content that your audience member wants to see. And we're all about asking our audience, what do they want from us? We'll every so often we'll pose that question and then they'll come back with suggestions and we'll make content. And then people love seeing that. They love ooh, the Army listened to us, and that brings in more people because they'll spread the word. They'll hey, I posed this question to the Army, they responded, they asked specific questions and the Army answered my question. And, so we do that engagement and we're constantly looking for these different areas that we can expand into.
Very good.
Yeah, the only thing I'd want to pile onto that is, we do a lot of presentations and briefs to leaders. So I speak to leaders fairly often, not since, quarantine life, but, normally when we're doing conferences and stuff like that. And it comes down to, communication is a commander's program. And so it fundamentally has to start with the commander's communication objectives. And once you get a good, thorough understanding what those objectives are, you're able to provide advice and counsel on the best ways to reach and meet those. And so, depending on what they're trying to do, that'll guide you to certain platforms and certain types of efforts. If they want to increase engagement, if they want to increase understanding with their younger troops, it really does help to shape the approach. So, I do spend a good amount of time talking to leadership. And that goes back to what Sonia was talking about with tone and the personality of your platforms too, because all of that has to be in alignment.
I think being willing to reevaluate platforms is really important too. I think, we've all had platforms that we thought were going to be great for something and they worked really well for a while and maybe the audience left that platform a little bit, earlier than you were expecting, but being willing to take a look at the analytics, look at what you're getting back from that audience and reevaluating. For us, it's once a year when we do our year-end analytics, we look back and see, are we getting what we want out of this platform? Is it worth the time and effort? That is the ROI there. And then being willing to shut it down if it's not. We've had Snapchat accounts that no longer exist. We've had Pinterest accounts that no longer exist, things like that. And I think it's really important because once you start feeding that beast, it's really easy to get in this mentality that you've got to keep it up and keep it going. But if it's not working, you need to be willing to have a strategy to get out of it as well.
Yeah, well said. We have 3 meetings this week with units where we're doing, we're just talking about social, providing them some advice and approaches they can take. It really, when it comes down to it, and the thing I told a group earlier today is there's no requirement to be on social media. There's nothing that is mandating that you have to run a page. It really does come down to what you're trying to do. The one thing I do say for most organizations, the only platform that I think makes the sense for everybody and that I think everybody should consider being on is Twitter. And really it's just because of the news of the day and the crisis comm element.
That's good.
And I'd like to go back to what Sonia said earlier about breaking your own news. Like the Army, we've kind of broached this conversation several times, and we feel that we should break our own news. It's like, why do we rely on third parties to put information out about us? Since we're the official platform, let us release that, that big topic, that major topic, and then let other media elements release that additional information on that.
All right, I know we're getting close on time. I just want to, what advice, guys, would you offer to someone who is just getting to a shop and they're just starting up social media, or they're getting someplace and they don't have a full grasp on what they're getting themselves into? If you had to pass something along, what would that be? Sonia, I'll let you start first since you're kind of new in the area.
Yeah, I think the big thing that you have to start with is, what is the goal? When you're going to be screaming into the vacuum, what is the goal? Are you there to communicate to family members? Okay, well then you should be on certain platforms. Are you there to inspire? Okay, then you should be on different platforms. Just like Jillian said, you don't have to be in all places because you then have to feed the beast. And know who your audience is and what your audience expects, because that will inform your churn and what kind of product you need to be putting out. It's just not necessary to be in all places at all times doing the coolest things when you're really just good at one thing. Be really good at that one thing, let it fill the goal that answers the why, and count it as a success, and then slowly build out from there. And also remember that just because you know who your audience is, when you start these channels, you have to then build an audience to go to those places. So if people are already on an existing website, or if they're all going to an existing space, don't create another subset just because you think it's gonna do something. The audience is already there. They're already attached to a certain place. Speak to them where they are.
That's good. Jillian, you have anything to add?
I would say too, find a good mentor, find somebody else, build the relationships with people who are also doing this job. It can be a lonely job when you're the one person doing it. And there's a lot of things that we've all learned through this process that we always happy to share. So, for me, I hear from the field every single day, multiple times a day. There's some people I hear from several times a week. And I know that we're all busy. I know that we all have things going on, but start building those relationships early, because you can really save yourself a lot of headaches and a lot of mistakes and heartaches if you find somebody that you can reach out to when you've got a real problem and ask the right questions. And for me, I'm always willing to strategize, always willing to have that conversation for those who are looking for it.
Tim, how about you?
I would say the main advice that hasn't already been hit on for me is I always say to my team, I would rather do things right. I don't want to do things the wrong way just to say we did them. So take time to learn the platform, learn what it is you want to do, and like Sonia referenced before, what it is you want to achieve with what you're trying to do before you do it. Do the homework. The resources are out there, whether you have a Lynda account or if it's just going on a YouTube tutorial. But learn the right ways to do it, the right ways to engage, and then always circle back around to is this the best for my organization? Is this reflective of my organization? If I was presenting this to, for myself, the Air Force Chief of Staff, for you, it might be a wing commander, a battalion commander, a ship skipper. If I showed this to him, would it be a good reflection upon them and what they want to put out? I'm not a big fan of trying to create a culture or a personality that doesn't exist on behalf of a platform. So if, for instance, our outgoing Chief Master Sergeant at Air Force has a certain personality, he can do certain things that others can't. So we lean on that for certain things. But if that wasn't who he is as a person, don't force it. So because when you do, people can read into it. People see through, the BS, I guess. People can see through that. So be organically who you are as an organization. And if you're going to do something the right way, if you're going to do something, make sure you're doing it the right way. Small example where I can be self-critical is, for instance, Instagram stories. Since I've got on board since November, I've wanted to get the Air Force more and more involved in Instagram stories. I'm relatively young. I have a lot of friends who are relatively young. They consume a lot of information through that. We started to dabble a little bit, but once COVID really started kicking up, no one on my team has that experience. I would rather be radio silent on that front than to have cringy stuff that, for lack of a better term, just isn't good and people are engaging with. So when we get the time and resources to tackle that beast, that's when we'll re-engage that. But right now, if me as the team lead, I don't feel like we can do it well, we're just not going to do it at all.
That's on Estrada?
Yeah, so everybody said amazing things that I do agree with. The number one thing I'd say is manage expectations and get that buy-in. Get your commander's intent. The Marine Corps is big on commander's intent. Get that commander's intent. You're the filter. They're telling you what they want. All right, you process that and then you get it out. But you have to manage expectations while also having that buy-in. So if they're asking you for something and you know you need a team of 4 for that, then get that team, because you do not want to fail. And everybody, social media is that new toy, right? Everybody wants it, but not everybody understands it. So do your homework, talk to everybody. I mean, for the Marine Corps, we tell the units, you're never annoying us. Reach out to us if you need help. We're here to help. Whatever you need, we'll do. And also look externally. Don't look just in the military. Don't look just in the DoD. Talk to people in the industry. Ask around what they're doing. Sometimes they'll ask you what you're doing. I know we talk to Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat a lot here, Instagram as well, to the point where we go and meet them and say, hey, here's our stuff. Tell us what we're not doing right. Tell us what we could do. And sometimes they'll even ask, like, well, how did you guys think of this? So it's always, you always have to be talking to everybody, especially with those big platforms, because they're changing all the time as well. So sometimes you get a heads up, like with Snapchat, they'll tell us, like, hey, we're about to come out with this. Can we test this with you? And we're like, of course. Yeah, we're all about it. But the biggest thing I'd say is manage expectations.
Good. So on Richardson or Big Army, you guys want to close this out?
Yeah, I'll start off and then I'll kick it over. But I mean, yeah, you guys covered it. I mean, be thoughtful in what you're going to do. The number one thing I would say is the same as everybody else has already said, but for Army viewers, at least, reach out to us. We have a monthly meeting, digital media working group that is an open door for anybody to dial in and listen to, or we talk strategy, we talk upcoming things. But then in between that, you guys probably get this question all the time. It's like, wow, how do I get my content on your platforms, right? How do I get my stuff on there? And that's where Sergeant Richardson will come into play here. But there is I tell people this all the time. There is amazing correlation between sending me a link and it showing up on the platforms. So, sometimes it's just as easy as asking. We're all looking to tell the Army story, so let's do it together. But the second piece of advice I would say is, if you're a civilian, if you're a contractor, or if you're an officer, the number one thing you need to do is listen to your enlisted soldiers. And we got our super NCO here, so I'm going to take my own advice and kick it over to him then.
Well, I think we have a great relationship within the office. This is probably the first place I've been where we can have open dialogue and throw ideas around, and my leadership listens to me. So, I really appreciate that. But as Tony was hitting on, social media is social. People forget that. They think it's all about the digital side. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes. So you need to reach out. You still need to run your email campaigns. Don't just think you're going to throw it out there in the internet and let it go viral. No, you need to reach out. You need to get on the phone. You need to build these relationships behind the scenes. So, and another thing is, I don't know about everyone else in the room. I didn't have the training when I got here. I understood social media from personal use and some of the smaller echelons, but there's no training teaching you how to run multiple platforms with millions of followers. That's, it's, you hope you fall in on a team where there's someone who can kind of show you the way. When I got here, it was just me and Tony, essentially. And, Tony was going to meetings, and here you got brand new Sergeant Richardson working Facebook platforms with, millions of followers. It's like, oh my God, what do I do now? So you have to be open to, one, tell yourself that you don't know everything, and you have to be willing to learn. You have to do your own research. It's cool that you listen to some other people, but do your own research to see what's out there, see what tools are out there. Talk to the industry leads. I think everyone in the room here really has a great working relationship with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all, Snapchat, and they reach out to us and let us know the changes. But if you're not doing that, do it. They are very open of explaining how you can, go around the algorithms and what content works best. So you definitely have to do that. And then don't fall short within your own comfort zone. Just understand that there's things that you like to do, but understand your audience and what they want. Like I said earlier, we always ask, what do you want to see? And your audience will tell you what they want to see. And more than likely, if you deliver what they want to see, it's going to do well. So just continue to do that and query your audience and know what your commanders want so you can meet those intents.
If I can add one thing that he just kind of put me in my head when he said that, is just try to find places to have fun. At the end of the day, you're doing a relatively cool job, something that a lot of people would give up a lot for the opportunity for something on the platforms we have the pleasure to work on. But even at the base, wing, battalion, ship level, it's still relatively cool. You're always going to have your box checkers, something that comes down from your commander, your senior enlisted folks. It's gonna suck getting sucked into the wormhole that is places like Twitter and the cesspools, having to monitor terrible comments that come through. But at the end of the day, it's still a relatively cool job. You get paid to scroll through social media, which most people get in trouble for at work. So just always keep that context in the back of your head, even when it gets monotonous.
I definitely like that. Just to mention, have someone mention to have fun. I think here in the Army social media office, they can probably do a sitcom off of the way we act. So it's part of who we are. And, sometimes that shows in our content, even if it's dry material, you kind of want to present it in a way that people will enjoy your content. If it's entertaining, people will continue to come back. So sometimes you have to put out a policy letter or something just straightforward, but for the most part, make it fun, make it memorable. And people will come and interact with it more often.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, we certainly appreciate your time. I'm sure that the viewers appreciate your time. We'll make sure that your contact information is available for those who want it. And again, just thank you all for what you do and continue to do good things out there.
Appreciate the time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a good day.